This podcast is sponsored by the White Bear, your local micropub on Southbourne Grove, where you can't watch the game, but you can definitely talk about it. Head to the White Bear on any AFCB match day wearing your team shirt and receive 30p off each pint. Check out www.thewhitebear.co.uk.
Here come the cherries and we're heading for the top of the tree. Bournemouth is a team that's going to show Division 3. Here come the leaders and the scorers at the Saturday, showing how to win the Southern way. So we sing, come on Bournemouth, come on Bournemouth. While you're out there winning, hear the shouting and the singing. We sing, come on Bournemouth, come on Bournemouth. Here come the cherries, here come the cherries, here come the cherries, number
Hello and welcome to All Departments. Our stoic Cherries drew 2-2 yesterday after crossing the border into Wales to face Swansea City. Here to look back on a day when we finally moved off 8 points is Gareth Davis. Gareth, how are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks Michael. Yourself?
Yeah, not bad, thanks. Pleased that we picked up a point yesterday. I probably would have taken a draw before the kick-off, the way things have been going, but the way the game played out, do you think it was 2 points lost or was it a decent point at the Liberty Stadium?
Oh, it's a difficult one, really. Like you say, you would have taken a point before the game because it would have stopped the rot that we've been in. But being 2-0 up away from home in the Premier League, given all our recent troubles, you got to say it's 2 points drop, really. And also the fact that we were so much better than them. They were very, very poor. Swansea, you can see how they've struggled. They've obviously got some problems there. I'd be surprised if their manager is there much longer. But enough about them. Let's talk about us. I thought we were absolutely superb yesterday. I really will. Given that people have sort of said, it's a weak squad given the injuries, it would struggle to get into the top half of the championship. Well, I tell you what, those boys, they played really, really well yesterday. And some of the players that have copped a bit of flack recently, Stanislas, King, they've got the jersey at the moment, and because of injuries and loss of form and whatever. But you couldn't fault them yesterday. Perhaps a little bit of naivety just cost us after the second goal. Perhaps our naivety cost us there. Really, we didn't defend very well. It was dubious. Was it offside? Wasn't it? Well, you look at the replays. It wasn't offside. But the ball should never have got in there. Shelby shouldn't be having a free header in the penalty box to head it back in, and it's a good finish from there forward. But all in all, take that out of the equation because it wasn't a penalty, and I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit later. I thought we were brilliant. We deserved the 3 points, and Swansea were very, very poor.
Eddie went with the one up front, which didn't surprise me at all. And he brought Steve Cook back in, so Simon Francis was back on the right. Adam Smith dropped to the bench. Glenn Murray was restored to the squad, although he only came on right at the end. So I'm assuming he's had his little punishment for whatever went on before the previous game. No Boritz, Alsop on the bench, no Ranty or Tomlin. So probably the strongest team Eddie would have put out. I mean, you could make arguments for starting Murray, although Eddie's been saying very positive things about King recently. We don't have a lot of strength in depth. I was quite surprised to see Tomlin not featuring in the squad at all. I haven't heard anything about him. Are you aware of any injury problems with him?
No, I'm not. It's a strange one with Tomlin. Whenever he's come in, he seemed to do okay, and then he just disappears the following game. I mean, whether there's a niggling injury there, this guy costs £3.5 million. You'd think you pay that kind of money, he's going to be in the 16 to not be anywhere near the not 16. The match day squad does seem a little strange. Like you say, is there an injury? Is there something else? Does Howe just think that he doesn't fit in with what we need at the moment? I don't know. I mean, it's difficult to see where he's going to start. especially now Arta's fit, I would say he was quite similar to Arta in the fact that he was a sort of an all-action sort of midfield player. He put himself about a little bit, got a good eye for goal, good pass with the ball. So perhaps now Arta being fit has that knocked him down the pecking order a little bit. But then, given what we had on the bench yesterday, and that's no disrespect to some of the players we had, I'm not singling anyone out, but Sean McDonald hardly got a game in the Championship last year. Now, I know Howe has said that, he'd treat all the players equally and the players that do well in training will get a chance and everything, but Tomlin being nowhere near the matchday squad, I don't know. That's a strange one for me, but like I say, we don't know what goes on behind closed doors. We don't know what goes on in training. Obviously, there's been a few moments people say about Tomlin, does he look a little bit overweight? Well, I don't buy that. It is just, look at Ashley Williams yesterday. First thing I saw when I saw Ashley Williams, I said to my father, crikey, he's a big guy. And again, we said, well, put him against anyone with pace and he's going to get destroyed. But he actually played really well yesterday, and you can see why he holds them together, and you can see why he holds Wales together. So saying, he's a player overweight, look at him, he looks a bit bigger than the rest. No, I don't think Howe would have signed him if there was those kind of issues. But yeah, it is a strange one with Tomlin, I have to say.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. I haven't seen or read anything. But you mentioned about his potential issues with his fitness. Is he overweight or not? I think that Eddie Howe isn't the sort of manager who will allow a player who isn't in correct weight-wise to have 3 or 4 games in the first team in order to get up to peak condition. He doesn't mind throwing them back in like Harry Arta when they're recovered from an injury and they will need a couple of games to really hit that top match fitness. But I think Dan Gosling's probably a good example of. When I looked at him last season, I just thought he's not at his fighting weight. And I think Eddie, I get the feeling Eddie says to the players, I can't afford to throw you into games and give you a chance to get you, onto your sort of the way I expect you to be. You're going to have to do it in training and in development squad matches. So that could be part of it. And I don't know. I mean, they do focus very much on every single detail now. So if you can imagine the players are being weighed and stuff like that's being checked. And I might be doing Tomlin a disservice going on about this, but yeah, I mean if that is the case, then I think that he's obviously been set a certain, or not obviously, but he could have been set a certain target weight or body mass index or whatever it is, and he said if you don't make that, then maybe it won't make the squad. Because I mean, you spoke about the bench, and yeah, I mean, it isn't the strongest bench in the Premier League by any stretch of the imagination. The players that are potentially in his position, well, I mean, he can play in that sort of hole behind the forwards, but you've got Kermagon. I mean, everybody loves him, but he hasn't shown much in the Premier League this year.
No.
You've got O'Kane and McDonald in midfield. You look at all of those and you think, well, yeah, Tomlin is potentially the equal of any of those, and possibly, though we haven't really seen it out of him, a better player. But anyway, he didn't make it onto the bench yesterday, and Glenn Murray came back in, and there was one or two other little tweaks. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with him going forward. Anyway, we started well, and I think we carried on pretty much in the same vein throughout most of the match. We took an early lead, but even before that, we had a chance, I believe. Dan Gosling put one over the bar from a junior Stanislas pass, but then we scored our first goal, and this was Josh King's first goal in a Bournemouth shirt, which I think most people have been hoping would happen sooner rather than later, and it has happened now. Charlie Daniels played the ball across the halfway line to junior Stanislas, and he knocked it in front of him and legged it forward, and we all know he's got a bit of pace. And then the two Swansea defenders, Young and Bartley, I'm not sure which order this happened, but one of them tried to clear it, booted it against the other one, and it went back into Stanislas's path. So it was a little bit of good fortune. Josh King praised Junior Stanislas afterwards. There was no mention of his good fortune, but then he did put in a decent ball after that. And so he and then Josh King was just in the middle of the penalty box, and he was being marked. But then, because of the mix-up between the two other defenders, the third defender, I don't know who that was then had to go to the ball, leaving Josh King just with the freedom of the penalty box, basically. And then Junior Stanislas had no trouble picking him out. When I first saw this goal, I thought that King had mishit it, and it was lucky that it went in. But when I actually saw it again, I realised that it wasn't as easy a chance as it looked, and he actually did tuck it into the corner back across the goalkeeper really neatly, and it was a really good finish. It was good to see him score, wasn't it?
No, it was a good goal. It was a good goal from King. Like you say, Stanislas deserves a bit of credit. I think at the time everyone thought, Stanislas had perhaps done better than he had. It wasn't until, obviously because it was right at the other end, it wasn't until watched it back on Match of the Day this morning, I thought, that was a little bit of luck. The little bit of luck that hasn't been with us, or certainly wasn't with us in the previous game against Newcastle. But I think King deserved that. I mean, King's copped a bit of flack from the supporters unfairly, obviously because people look at him as the most similar player to Wilson in our squad. So players think, supporters think, this guy is going to play the Wilson role, and that's why I think since Wilson's got injured, King's perhaps gone above Murray in the pecking order a little bit, because it was pretty obvious, I think, that Murray was perhaps brought in to play the Kermorgant role that Kermorgant was so effective in for the majority of last season. Because, like you say, everyone loves Jan. He seems like a really nice guy, and he scores some brilliant goals. Is he good enough to play in the Premier League? I don't think so. So we signed Murray. Murray would play that, would perhaps come in and play that role, because he played that role for Crystal Palace very well last season when he got fit. Wilson gets injured, and then it throws it all up in the air. So you play King in that role, and I think he's took a little while to grow into it. But I guess that shows that Howe doesn't want to change the style of play, because King is the most. King is almost a like for like replacement for Wilson. Obviously his goal scoring record hasn't been as good, and some would say that his pace isn't as good. But if you want to play that kind of style where one striker stretches the centre halves out, then King's the best option. I thought he did that well, but again he tired in the second half, and perhaps wasn't as effective in the centre in the second half, and it was probably more the midfield that dominated the game in the second half. I mean, apart from put the ball in the net for the penalty and then commit a horrendous tackle on Arter near the end, I thought Shelvey and the rest of the Swansea midfield was absolutely anonymous, really. I thought Goslin, Sermon and Arter as a three were absolutely outstanding yesterday. I think it was probably Sermon whose standards hasn't been as high this season as they were last year, and I think perhaps he would be the first to admit that. I thought Sermon was excellent, doing that role that he did so well last year, where he would sit in front of the back four and just mop up the play and give an easy pass. I thought he did that brilliantly well yesterday. Arter was Arter, wasn't he? He was all over the pitch. He wasn't afraid to put his foot in. He always wanted the ball. And Goslin, I think yesterday we really saw the Goslin that first burst onto the scene when he was a youngster at Everton. I know his career sort of stalled a little bit, went to Newcastle, wasn't the right move for him, obviously. And then last year he struggled to get into our side and had a few injury problems. But Goslin's a classy performer, and I think he started to show that yesterday. Took his goal ever so well. It was a lovely finish. Again, when you see it live and it's at the other end, you can't really appreciate just how good it was. But that was a really, really good finish to hit it like that in the top corner. The goalie had no chance. But that was the sort of the icing on the cake for Goslin. I thought he did a lot of other good work. He wanted the ball. He linked the play up well. He broke the play up well too. So I think going forward at the moment, our best chance of winning games, or not getting beaten, should I say, because let's be honest, we go to places like Chelsea and we play at home to Man United. As much as Howe won't want to admit it, the first thing is to be, right, well, let's not get beat here. We don't want another Man City. We don't want another Tottenham where after half an hour, 3 or 4 goals down, and playing the 3 in midfield with the 2 wingers and then the one up front on his own is probably the best way of doing that. And I would say that you've got the 3 best midfielders at the moment to do that in Arthur, Gosling and Sermon.
Yeah, I think it's possible that we're going to see King up front on his own at home as well as away.
Yeah, I think so.
Because, as you mentioned, those 3 in the centre of the midfield are currently, well, I wouldn't say they're undroppable, but they're doing everything they can to stay in the team. And it's difficult for Eddie to leave any one of them out.
Yeah.
And so he's basically with King from day one. Even when Callum Wilson was fit, he was regularly starting King alongside him. And this was the period when people were thinking, what exactly is King doing? He's not doing anything. I mean, I'm sure he was doing something, but it wasn't obvious. And he's essentially saying, this is my guy. This is the guy I'm going with. He even said in the press conference this week, the best is yet to come with Josh King. So he can clearly see something in him that he can get the best out of. And he scored yesterday, but even in the second half at Southampton, most of the game against Newcastle, he looks more like the player that we would like him to be. And hopefully it will continue. I mean, yesterday was a huge confidence boost to score that goal. I mean, he's been given the shirt by the manager every week now. And hopefully, I mean, I can't see him banging in the goals like Callum Wilson, but, if he could start to score a little bit more, regularly, if he got like a couple of more goals between now and, say, New Year, Christmas, I mean, it's not a huge return. It'd be lovely if he started banging them in left, right and centre, but just, he's just started to contribute to the goals and leading the line. It could make a big difference for us. And I just think that Eddie sticks with these players when other people can't necessarily see what's going on at first. And most of the time, not all of the time, most of the time, he does manage to get the best out of them. And he sort of seems to be able to put that polish on them with the coaching. And it makes the difference. I mean, we talked about Dan Gosling. Well, Gosling was, as you said, previously a rising starlet, but faded once he went to Newcastle. And then Stanislas came along and was in a similar position to Gosling last season in that he wasn't featuring in the team very much. And when he did come on for his little cameos every now and then, it just wasn't enough and he just didn't look like a player at all. Again, alongside King, him and King seem to have come into the team partly because of the requirement for pace in Wilson's absence, as you said. Yeah. And they both have, I wouldn't say they've seized their chance, but they're certainly doing enough to stay in the team, aren't they?
Well, they've stuck their hand up, and like you say, when the opportunities come along, I think they have sort of seized the jersey, really, and they're making the manager say, "Well, you can't drop me. Whatever you've got in reserve, you can't drop me." I mean, again, Mark Pugh, we love Mark Pugh. We know what Pugh will do, but there is a prerequisite with any Eddie Howe team that it has to have pace. And there's this big thing about Bournemouth have got to change the way they play. Well, no, they don't, because the manager won't. And it's not because he's a stubborn old so-and-so. It's because that's what he knows. That is what he knows. So he will try to mould a team around the way he wants them to play. So that's why Wilson gets injured, so we play King, because King is a like-for-like replacement. Now, I know saying Stanislas coming in for Pugh, well, that's a little bit different because Stanislas is a different kind of player to Pugh. Pugh is a box of tricks, beat 2 or 3 players, beats them again sometimes. That's one of his downfalls, unfortunately. And then Pugh knows where the goal is as well. I mean, there's no slur on Pugh. I think if Wilson was fit, and I think if you add Grade and all the other players, I think Pugh would. It's funny to say this. I think Pugh would probably be nearer the first team if we didn't have any injuries than he is now, because King is no Wilson, but he's as close to Wilson as we want, or as we're going to get. So Howe's thinking, right, well, where can I get some more pace into my team? Well, I know, well, Stanislas will play. And actually, I thought League Cup game against Liverpool, I thought Stanislas was good, even though he played a different role there. He almost played in the false 10 role. Second half at Southampton, well, it couldn't get any worse, but it was obvious that some changes were needed. And I think he sort of did seize the jersey or seize the moment or whatever you want to call it. And then against Newcastle, against Newcastle, he continued where he left off. And again, yesterday, I just thought there was some energy to his game. Last year, like you say, when it's difficult for a player to come on for 10 minutes here and there and assert themselves. Especially a lot of the times when the team's 3 or 4-0 up, like what happened last season. The game's lost. It's like a training game then, really. There's no urgency really. Whereas it's a little bit different now. That it's a different ball game really. Because we're not used to winning and we're struggling and there's injuries and like you say, we've got to make do with what we've got. But I thought Stanislas in the last 3 or 4 games has shown perhaps what he's a little bit more about, because he's having a run of games. And there's one thing that everyone talked about how good Stanislas was yesterday. The goal that was disallowed when he was just offside. Well, if that had gone in, they'd have still been talking. What a great finish it was! I don't know if you saw it. So I think it was Richie put the ball. Richie put the ball across, and he sort of hit it on the half volley. The ball was sort of behind him almost. Hit it on the half volley in the bottom corner. It was a really, really top finish, but he was just offside. It was the right decision from the officials. So perhaps Stanislas has got those goals in his locker, and he may come to the fore. Again, on yesterday's performance, I can't see how making too many changes going forward, mainly because we haven't got anything else. Like you say, the cupboard's very bare, the squad's very thin because of the injuries. But to play that way that Howe wants to play, which is with pace, which is get the ball moving forward quickly, I think what he's got at the moment is the best at doing that, and he will not change. People say, "Oh, this plan B. We need this plan B." Well, maybe not. We're certainly not going to go to away games. Not even home games. We're not going to play against the better teams and go gung ho. We were never going to do that. But still, with playing 5 in midfield and 1 guy up front with pace, we can still play like we did last year, but with that 5 in midfield, you're keeping it a little bit tighter. You are going in the game thinking, well, first and foremost, we're going to try not to get beat here, because we're going to be nice and tight in midfield. We're going to compact the midfield. We're going to press high up the pitch, which is what we did yesterday. We pressed really, really high up the pitch. The second goal, was it second goal? Was it one of the? I can't remember, but Leon Britton fell over. He was put under pressure on the halfway line. I think it was from Daniel.
That was wasn't that the one where King nicked the ball? And
that's right. Sorry, King nicked the ball.
Half the length of the pitch. But that was because we pressed the ball really, really well. And I think if you got that extra guy in midfield, that lets you do that. But just saying about the midfield, you talk about the goals. I think at the moment, if we're going to stay up, and it's a big ask, a lot of the goals are going to have to come from midfield, because as much as we've praised King and he had a good game yesterday, but like you said, he is no Wilson, unfortunately. Perhaps Howe thinks, well, he has other attributes. I mean, he seems like he's a tireless runner, and he is quite quick, and he seems like quite a strong guy. And it was a smart finish yesterday. But I think if we are going to stay up, I think the goals have to come from midfield, really. And if you've got someone like Gosling who's in form, Richie, Arter, players like that, someone said I saw a tweet yesterday, and it said 2 out of Norwich, Aston Villa, Sunderland, Newcastle and Bournemouth will stay up this season, and that's what we've got to look at. And okay, we've played Norwich, and they walked all over us. We were very poor that day. But the other teams, we played Sunderland, they were awful. Sunderland were terrible, especially at the back. The 2 centre halves were all over the place. They'll be a little bit tighter under Allardyce, but
they've got to go with what they've got at the moment, so they can't change much. Newcastle were awful, and again, I'm being honest now. They were. Newcastle were terrible. We didn't win the game.
Terrible yesterday as well, weren't they?
Yeah, exactly. Terrible yesterday. Aston Villa beat us on the first day of the season. What have they done since? So all right. So we haven't got a goal scorer, but we've only got to finish above them sides. I know it. That'd be brilliant if that happened. And achieving it's going to be difficult, but you have to think like that. We would be happy with 17th place, wouldn't we? We would, wouldn't we? Really, we'd be given what's. I think a lot of people would have been happy with 17th place before the season started. I actually wouldn't have been. I thought our squad was better than that, and I thought we would have finished in mid-table. But we've had all these injuries, so you've got to take that into account. But I think most fans would be happy with 17th. And if you look at it, that we only have to finish above three of them. We're one of them, but we have to finish above those sides I've mentioned. I don't think it's all. I don't think it's all doom and gloom. And the midfield could do that for us. They could do that for us. I really think they could.
Yeah, I think 17th place now. Bite your hand off, really.
Oh, absolutely.
On the style of play thing, I mean, well, the whole thing about if Bournemouth want to stay up, they need to change their style of play. That's just coming from the big media outlets. So you saw it on Match of the Day last night. Martin Keown saying, well, they conceded all these goals. They need to change their style of play. They're a bit naive. It's like the guys who've been knocking about in the top division in their playing careers and are now working in the media. It's kind of condescendingly. I mean, they have to say something, and so they kind of condescendingly say, well, if only you knew better, you'd change your style of play. Well, first of all, Eddie Howe isn't an idiot. He knows what he's doing, and he's had, more success as a manager than most of those guys on the telly telling him what to do. Secondly, everybody knows the style of play isn't going to change dramatically, but he's had to change a bit in order to adapt to the situation with the sort of decimation of the squad following the injuries, and he's taken a few weeks to find what looks like is well, I was going to say best 11, but certainly his strongest way of starting the game with the players in their positions. And there's a couple come back in, like Cook has come back into the team now, and also, and that kind of proves what I'm about to say next. He isn't totally stuck and totally unadaptable in one style of play. It's a similar style of play. It's always a passing game. It's always high tempo, lots of energy and pace, like you said. But he will change it from match to match if he thinks he has to, just to adapt. I mean, the way that it's presented in the media then spills over into the general public who, unlike us, don't look at the team very closely. And it becomes, well, if only Bournemouth knew better, they'd change their style of play. And it's basically just a load of rubbish. It's not going to happen. And also, he's had so much success with that style of play. Why would he change it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, first of all, I think it's incredibly lazy from the so-called pundits. I wouldn't call them pundits. They're just ex-pros who are paid to be on the. A pundit's supposed to give you some actual analysis of the game. Well, any old idiot could say, oh yeah, Bournemouth need to change their play. Well, I could tell you how we need to change our play. We need to score more goals than the opposition. There you go. Are they going to pay me? I mean, it was literally like a stuck record from, I think it was Shearer and Keown. I mean, I didn't even watch it. I saw the goals and I saw what people had put on Twitter and whatnot about it last night. So I'm not even going to give them watch this nonsense, because it just is nonsense and it's just real lazy. To say, oh yeah, how? Okay, that's fair enough. Bournemouth have got to change the way they play. How can they do that then? That's the question I'd ask them. I'd sit Martin Keown down now and say, how would we do that then, Martin? What, do we put 2 6'7" forwards up there and just knock the ball long? Is that how we're going to... That almost, to me, seems like what they're trying to say how we should play. First of all...
They are. They're starting to get Tony Pulis back, I think.
But that's not going to... But even Pulis, people sort of like not Pulis when he went to... And I was his biggest critic when he was at Bournemouth. And what he's done since actually shows that perhaps we were a little bit wrong, or maybe it wasn't. I think the job come a little bit too soon for him. He was chucked in at the deep end. He lost a lot of his good players. I mean, that's all in the past now. But they weren't a long ball team, not really. They made themselves difficult to beat. Now, how can we make ourselves any more difficult to beat? I don't think we can. But what they're advocating is a total change of style. How can you win football matches any differently other than the way we do it? Because we've got a squad of players that we have to work with. That the manager would have brought that squad of those players in to work in a system that he wants to affect. So how can we then say, right, well, we're going to scrap that and we're going to play two big brutes up front, which we haven't got. Okay, we've got Murray, we've got Kermigan, they're going to win a few balls in the air. Okay, but how can we play any other way? I don't understand how we can play any other way. We have to play the way we are. And yes, you can adapt it on a match by match basis. And you, like you said, going forward, we're going to have to, because there are going to be games when you can play with a little bit more freedom. When you're playing against the teams in the bottom say 8 maybe. But you go away to Arsenal, you can't be gung ho, and you can't give them a lot of space because they'll just absolutely murder you. Now, to me, that's playing differently. But what they're advocating, like you say, is almost this sort of long ball game. I mean, I don't know what you think. I think that's what they're trying to get at. Which, if it is, then that's just total nonsense. It really is.
Yeah, well, it's nonsense for more than one reason. I mean, it's not going to happen. That's the main reason it's nonsense.
Yes,
and secondly, as you've already alluded to, it's just kind of lazily filling the airtime with this kind of patting us on the head and saying, now, come on, we're going to have to teach you what it's like at big school now. And it's just ridiculous. But of course, if we were winning, or if we turn it around and start picking up more points, then they're going to be saying, oh, they've stuck with their style of play, they've been very brave, you've got to admire it, blah, blah, blah. So, that could change easily. Hopefully it will change going forward and they'll start praising us as opposed to saying, well, we need to change it. I just wanted to talk about Federici yesterday, and he's claiming at present of the place between the sticks. He made a couple of really decent saves in the first half when he had a header to stave and he pushed one round the post. I think he's starting to look like he's going to be the number one choice going forward. Do you think he is going to be still the number one choice if Boruc comes back to fitness?
That's $1 million question at the moment, isn't it, really? I'll be honest, I don't think any of our goalkeepers fill me with a great deal of confidence, to be honest. But at the moment, I would say that Federici has to be the best option going forward, just because Boruc's confidence must just be completely shot to bits after what happened against Spurs. Well, I think the signs were there in the Watford game. I mean, that was a massive error in the Watford game, in a game that really, take that error away and we would have won. Now, in the Tottenham game, would we have won if you took his errors out? I don't know, because Tottenham were brilliant and they've shown over this weekend that they destroyed a decent West Ham side. We
wouldn't have lost 5-1 that day, would we?
No, we wouldn't have done. But would we have won?
No,
I don't quite think so. So perhaps looking at Boruc's errors, the one against Watford was a bigger error. And I just somehow think the writing was on the wall. I don't know. It's being a goalie is a difficult job because every little error is magnified 100 times. If you're a striker and miss an open goal, well, you've got another chance and you could score. You could score again. Or if you're a midfielder and you misplace a pass or you fall off a tackle or whatever, then that doesn't get magnified. But if you're a goalie and you drop an absolute rick, then that is going to be magnified because you're a goalie and that's just the way it is. But the one thing I would say about Boruc, and I said this to some friends on Saturday, is that did we actually see the best of Artur Boruc last year? I don't know about that because it didn't matter. It was almost like it didn't matter what happened at the defensive end because we'd just go and score 6 every week and we'd win the game, and that was that. That's true though. A lot of the teams we just played them off the park really. So did we really see the true Artur Boruc last year, or are we seeing the true Artur Boruc now? I mean, Southampton didn't want him. Now, no one really made a big deal about that at the time because we were in the Championship. So the fact that this was a Premier League goalie making a step down in effect, that was seen like a good thing. But now he's in the Premier League. Well, Southampton didn't want him at this level last year. So have we ignored that fact? I don't know. Perhaps I'm being too harsh on the guy, really. It's difficult to say, really. But I certainly think that the Watford era. Everyone goes on about the Spurs errors, and yeah, they were awful. There's no getting away from that. But did the Watford era in effect the snowball that started the avalanche? Really, because that cost us the game really. And Federici's come in. Obviously, he didn't get off to a great start at Manchester City. He done all right yesterday, but he didn't have a lot to do really. Yes, he did make 2 great reaction saves, but did we have a spell where our box was being bombarded with corner after corner, and did they have shot after shot? No, they didn't. So I would say the jury's still out about Federici, but he's got to be the best option going forward at the moment. Is that the end of Artur Boruc as a Bournemouth player? I'm not sure. He only got a year's contract, did he? Is that right? Did he get a year's?
Yeah.
He only got a year's contract. Perhaps Federici was brought in as the long-term or longer-term solution. I don't know. Only Eddie Howe knows the answer to these kind of questions. We can surmise and give our views as we see fit. There'll be some people that totally disagree with me and say, well, no, you can't drop a guy. He's a guy that's a Polish international. He's played at the highest level. He's only 36, 35. That's not considered old for a goalie. Perhaps if we give him a run of games, his confidence will go or come back. But I would say at the moment Federici's the best option going forward. But we've yet to see him under any kind of real pressure. I mean, let's be honest. Against Newcastle, we could have got a seat out and read the paper from cover to cover. He did nothing apart from pick the ball out of the net, and there was some doubt as to whether that goal was. He could have perhaps done better with that. So I think the jury's out with Federici. But we look at what's coming up in the next 3 games. Certainly, you've got a very good informed Everton team, and you've got Chelsea and Man United. So I think after that, we'll then know whether Federici's the right choice going forward. And Boruc might be back in by then. Who knows? Who knows, really?
Yeah, it's funny with Boruc because he played against Spurs, like you said, even though he was supposedly injured. Then he dropped out again against Southampton. And he played for Poland midweek. I'm pretty sure he played the whole game. They won. And then he didn't even feature in the squad yesterday. So I wonder if it is injury. I mean, because he's had allegedly a bit of a colourful past. And you just wonder if there's other stuff going on that we don't know about. I mean, obviously, what happened against Man City must have been injury-related unless there was some kind of fireworks backstage just before the game. But I'd be surprised if that happened. But since then, there's the way he's been in and out of squads and games and appearing for his country and then not even making it onto the bench for us unless he got back late or something. It's all a bit odd, the way that he hasn't just been out injured or he hasn't at least been on the bench, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a little bit strange. I mean, you would firstly say, well, it has to be down to an injury. But like you then quite rightly say, is there a little bit more to it? He has had a colourful past, but I don't know. Who knows? Only the manager and his coaching staff and Jason Tindall know the real answer to that. It does seem strange if he was dropped because of an internal matter, or if he was dropped of form, then you would think that after playing for Poland in the week, he would at least have been on the bench on Saturday. I mean, when they read the team out and they said substitute Ryan Allsop, I thought, they've got that wrong. Surely they've got that wrong. And wasn't until I then checked on my phone and the official team sheet said Allsop. I thought, that just something's not quite right there. Unless he has come back with another injury, unless it's it's an injury that's perhaps ongoing and the form of treatment is just getting him through on a game by game basis. But he's come back and he said, you know what? No, it's flared up again. I don't know really. If that is the case, then that's a shame really, because you would like to think that he would want to do his utmost to get himself back into the squad, and trying to atone for the errors he's made earlier in the season. But at the moment, it seems to be that, well, if Saturday's anything to go by, his third choice, which is really strange, and considering he was first choice at the start of the season.
The White Bear Micropub on Southbourne Grove is a proud supporter of AFC Bournemouth and sponsor of all departments. Head to the Bear for real ales, locally produced food and plenty of good conversations about the Cherries. Check out www.thewhitebear.co.uk.
So, on 26 minutes, we scored our second goal, took a 2-0 lead, and this was I thought it was a pretty good goal. Charlie Daniels ran a long way with the ball, seemed to surprise the Swansea midfield and defence that he was just going to run directly into the box with the ball, almost heading on a diagonal from his normal position to the penalty spot. And then he surrounded by Swansea players, but none of them actually putting in anything that looked like a challenge. Maybe they were a bit afraid to clatter him in case they gave away the penalty. He laid the ball off to Harry Arter, and Arter didn't quite control it properly, surprisingly, at first, but it sort of bounced into a bit of space behind him and he was able to recover, and he kind of pirouetted and laid it off to Matt Ritchie. And then Ritchie did not. He was very cool-headed, and you can see him lift his leg up and down. I counted 4 times before he made the pass, and all the Swansea players looked like frozen, waiting to see what was going to happen. I was surprised that none of them went to the ball. And then Dan Gosling, in kind of the style that we've seen from Frank Lampard so many times over the years, arrived late in the box, and Ritchie then on this 4th swing of the leg actually, passed the ball. I think he's second in the assists chart in the Premier League at the moment. And then Gosling, first time, give him his due, fired it in, great finish, and we were 2-0 up. I thought it was a good goal from our point of view. I thought it was unbelievably poor defending by Swansea. They were so leaden-footed and so slow to put in a challenge. But yeah, 2-0, it was, obviously you're up 2-0 in any game, home, away from home, doesn't really matter. You think, well, this has given us a great chance to win the game. I thought it was a really decent goal.
Excellent goal, excellent all-round. Daniel, obviously from their point of view, it was a terrible goal, even worse than the first, because the first was a bad goal to concede because everyone stood still and let King tap the ball in from 6 yards. But this was even worse because, like you said, Daniels run virtually unchallenged. I think he did beat one of the defenders on the edge of the box, but Daniels run excuse me Daniels run unchallenged into the box, like you say, laid it off to Arter, who miscontrolled it really, because I think if Arter had controlled it, I think Arter would have had a shot, but he didn't. And then, like you say, it come to Ritchie, and it was also almost like they froze. It was like, they froze and stopped, and Ritchie sort of just had the ball at his feet and just waited and waited and waited. And then again, terrible defending, because no one tracked Gosling's run. No one tracked Gosling's run at all. Gosling just appears and puts the ball in the back of the net, 2-0, and you think, wow, crikey, given what's gone on, all the defeats, 2-0 up away from home at a decent side, and they are. I know I've said they were poor, but they've got good players there. the lad Shelby plays for England. There's some other internationals in their side. They're no mugs, but we made them look really, really ordinary in the first half. I know they had a couple of chances. Federici made a couple of saves, but I actually thought their chance only come from breakaways. We dominated the ball. We totally dominated the midfield. And to go in at 2-0 or to go up 2-0 after less than half an hour, we're in dreamland there, really, because like we said when we started, you would have been happy with a point yesterday. And at that point, the game was still on a knife edge, really, because obviously we're 2-0 up. Their supporters immediately turned on the players and the manager, and there was a lot of boos, and people were heading down the exits to get their early half-time pint. And you just thought, if we can just sit in here for 5 or 10 minutes and perhaps see it out to half time, then we're in a really good place here, because I know it's easy to say it 2-0. We're only going to get better, and they were only going to get worse because the first goal highlighted their frailties at the back, or just their non-existent defending, and then the second goal was it was even worse, really. You say left back runs 50 yards unchallenged, centre midfielder miscontrols the ball, and he still managed to lay it off to the winger. The winger then just dilly-dallies on the ball, like you say, lifts his leg up and down half a dozen times, and then the Gosling arrives unannounced and puts it in the top corner. They couldn't be any more of a shambles if they tried. It couldn't have gone any better for us if we had tried. But unfortunately, it wasn't to be. And like you say, it was a really poor goal from our point of view to concede there, really. Shelby has almost a free header where he just loops it back, and then we stand still. We play statues then at that point. We stand still appealing for offside, and even though everyone in the away end was shouting, it was offside. I remember saying to my dad, I don't think it was off. It was one of them ones where it looked so offside, it wasn't offside if you follow, and that was because I think it was either Ayew or Ida, I think that's his name, the other centre forward, was stood so far offside. I think everyone looked at him and thought, why hasn't the linesman put his flag up? But obviously he wasn't interfering with play. And Ayew is a smart finish from Ayew, to be fair. And then, it's a different game then, because immediately the atmosphere changes. The home supporters have gone from being down in the dumps to think, well, actually we're only one goal behind now against a team themselves in Bournemouth that have been doing badly in the last few weeks. We've got a real chance here, and well, they shouldn't have had another chance to get back in it, but they did, because I'm sorry, but that was never a penalty in a month of Sundays, was it?
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a minute. Just going back to their first goal, like you said, Neil Taylor crossed it in quite high, and Sylvain Distin and Charlie Daniels both went for the ball. I think Daniels got the touch, but it only dropped into that kind of no man's land where Shelby was waiting and was able to head it forward. And it was we stepped out, or we tried to step out, which was a risky thing to do anyway, because the way the play was developing, and they showed it on the telly, and I stopped it, freeze framed it on the internet as well, and it's Charlie Daniels that is just on the corner of the 6-yard box, and Ayew is just in front of that line of the 6-yard box. So Daniels just playing him on side, and like you said, Ada or somebody is stood but miles away from the ball, and so can't be called offside. So it was essentially the correct decision that it wasn't offside, and then he did his back heel, which just took Federici by surprise. It was risky strategy to play offside there, but also I don't think our offside trap, if you can call it that, is as effective without Elphick, because he is the most vocal of the defenders, and he leads he's in charge of that. He's telling them out or what to do, without him it isn't working. And you can say other things about him as a defender, although obviously he's been brilliant for us, gone up another level, it's tougher, but there isn't anybody who can do that job as well. I mean, I'm not there with the players, listening to what's going on. But I'm pretty sure that is one thing we definitely missed about Tommy Elphick, is that he's the boss at the back in terms of giving the commands about when to step out and when not to step out. And we haven't looked as effective in terms of offsides without him there, have we?
No, we haven't. And I just think it's a risky business playing offside in your own 6-yard box like that. I mean, my first thought after the goal went in is, how he's going to be furious that no one went and, like, AU backheeled the ball in the goal. Now, that's as soft as it comes. You know, someone should be someone should be putting their foot in there trying to make a challenge. If you are going to play offside, which is offside's a percentages game, really, you're banking on your bank of 4 or 5 or however many defenders coming up as one. And like you say, if the communication's not quite right, then that's not going to work so well. Like you say, Elphick is a leader, very vocal leader. Whereas Cook and Distan would perhaps need to play with him. One of them would need to play. I mean, Distan has been a good player. Distan is still doing a good job at this level, I think, because he's more what I would call an old-fashioned centre-half, you know, no nonsense, puts his head in where it hurts. You know, I know we like to play pretty football out from the back, but if there's any player that's just going to sort of say, well, no, actually, I'm just going to kick it into row Z when it needs to, then he's that type of player. But then, like you say, you don't have really probably the most vocal player in the back four is Francis. And the role that Francis plays means that, you know, he plays in quite an attacking role. I don't quite know where he was for stepping up for this offside. But if your most vocal defender is one of your fullbacks, that perhaps could lead you into difficulty, perhaps as yesterday proved, to be honest. But there we go. It's just one of them. Like, whether you play offside or not, you should. I think the first thing you're taught it when you play football at school. You got to play to the whistle, and we didn't play to the whistle yesterday because if we'd done that, someone would have challenged AU, and he wouldn't have backheeled the ball in from 6 yards. There's no doubt about that at all.
No, and then the momentum swung back in their favour. Like you said, their fans were booing, and mutiny was on the horizon following our second goal. But they got back in it so quickly. There was no time for that to build. I mean, if we'd have obviously gone in at 2-0 at half-time, there'd have been more booing on the half-time whistle, and you know, their dressing room wouldn't have been a very nice place to be. Instead, of course, they got the first goal almost immediately. I think I read somewhere today it was 87 seconds after we scored our second goal. And then they had the momentum again for themselves, and then they got the penalty. And I mean, they showed this in quite a lot of detail on Match of the Day. They even showed a little close-up, a little magnified bit of Francis and Ayu's legs, Ayu's leg just brushing Francis. I mean, short of actually cutting his leg off, I don't think there's a lot that Francis could have done to avoid that when they're just running almost side by side. Ayu had a slight lead, and then you could say he lost his balance and went down and, you know, clipped the other leg with his leg, or you could say, well, he made a meal of it and went down doing that, clipping in one leg against the other thing. The ref gave a penalty. Probably in real time, it would have been much harder to tell whether that was a penalty or not. Sometimes you see what look like stuck on penalties just waved away by referees. It hurts a lot more when it's your own team and you see it and you think, well, to be honest, we've been very harshly treated there. But yeah, I mean, it didn't look by the letter of the law that it was a penalty, did it?
No, not at all. I mean, I'd actually, first of all, say I don't think, a lot of people said, oh, AU dived. I don't actually think he dived. I think he just got himself in a real pickle and went over, to be honest. He didn't roll about on the floor. He sort of like half appealed, but the referee had already given the penalty. Now, like I say, I was sort of stood the other side of the goal, but I still had a really good view of it because I was in the lower tier. And first of all, I thought to myself, how is the referee 100% certain? Surely you've got to be 100% certain that is a penalty. And seeing that there wasn't... I know, like you say, in real time, it's really, really difficult. And it is difficult. I mean, I've only ever refereed kids' football. But, you know, it must be a really, really difficult job. And perhaps we give the referees a little bit too much stick at times. But in that kind of instance, you have to be 100% sure that was a foul. And I don't think, even if you saw that in real time, could you be 100% sure that was a foul. And he was actually in a good position. I thought the referee was in a really, really good position because he was quite close to the play. And I think he was sort of standing to the sort of side on, actually in the penalty box. How can he give that penalty? I fail to see how an official at the very, very top level, and Andre Mariner is a top referee. He's been a Premiership referee for a number of years now. How can he be 100% certain that's a penalty? I don't think he can, and I think that's why it's a poor decision, really. But
I think that the other thing that could have potentially sowed a seed of doubt in Mariner's mind that it wasn't a penalty was where it took place. It wasn't as if Ayew was herring in on the goal. He was, from where you were standing, I imagine it was on your right. And
yeah, correct.
And it was quite a way over to the right in the penalty box. Yeah. He wasn't like clean for on goal or anything like that. And, so Mariner perhaps didn't think of any of this, and he hasn't got very long to think about it. But that was another reason. If the foul takes place in any part of the penalty box, it's a penalty. But, there's always that thing where sometimes you feel it has to be a slightly more heinous foul than it would be outside the box that you get a free kick for to get a penalty for in the box. Well, in some ways you could say you'd be lucky to get a free kick for that one.
Yeah, and, you would.
Anyway, he gave it, and then Shelvey stepped up and he put it right in the corner. Federici's he did well.
It was a great penalty, brilliant penalty, really, really good penalty. No goalie's going to save that. It was low, right in the corner. Again, I was stood right behind that, and like I say, Federici dived the right way. It was so accurate. Sort of a foot towards them, foot back towards Federici, and he probably would have saved it. But the ball had almost hit the back of the net and come back out again before Federici had finished his dive. So it was a good penalty, but I would say that was the only constructive thing that Shelvey did in the whole game. No, seriously, I like I said previously, I thought our midfield, they absolutely took their midfield to the cleaners, and that's a decent midfield. Shelvey, the Korean lad Key, Leon Britton, who's played at that level for a number of years and is a good player. Our midfield three walked all over them. There's Shelvey. Shelvey gets in the England team, So people talk about perspective all the time, and is it as bad as people say it is? Well, our midfield, probably if you put them two midfields, if you compared them, you'd say, well, Swansea's better than ours. But it wasn't yesterday. We were much better than them. And Shelvey did nothing apart from score the penalty, put the ball in the rose head, and then commit a horror tackle. But I'm sure we'll probably talk about that a little bit later, because that was a horrendous challenge. Absolutely. And again, goes back to how the referee, I've seen some still shots today of it. The referee's perfectly placed, and you can clearly see that Shelvey comes in with his studs raised. He should have gone and had an early bath, but for some reason he didn't. And again, that's where the criticism of the referee will stem from. And if you actually analyse it, you would say we've been hard done to by the referee yesterday.
Yeah, we might as well talk about that now. I didn't see that until I saw the photos this evening. They didn't show it on Match of the Day, and I haven't seen it anywhere else. It's a horrible looking photo. His leg, his studs are going halfway up Harry Arter's shin pad, and Arter's foot is on the ground. One of his there's daylight between both of Shelvey's feet and the grass, and Andre Mariner is very well placed. I've only seen the photo. I haven't seen the speed of the tackle, although by the looks of things, both of them were not holding anything back. It was just Arter he had one foot on the ground and his studs were lower. It was horrible. Did it look bad at the time?
Again, you couldn't really tell, because it was sort of a tangle of bodies. Sigurdsson committed the first foul. Typical Arter, picked the ball up, drove, head down. typical Harry Arter. Say he got sort of halfway into the Swansea half, and Sigurdsson fouled him. And I think if you look at the still, the referee's actually got his whistle in his mouth because he's blowing for the foul which Sigurdsson committed, because Sigurdsson got booked as well as Shelvey. I'm sure it was Sigurdsson. In fact, I'm certain it was Sigurdsson.
Yeah, they were both booked.
So Sigurdsson. So to us, it just looked like it looked like a bit of a tangle of bodies. And again, where it took place on the pitch, the actual goal net was sort of obstructing my view. And so I thought, well, Shelvey's gone in there a little bit hard, but I didn't think it was as bad as it was. And it wasn't until, like I say, Match of the Day didn't show it. I watched some highlights through Sun Goals last night as well, and I don't think it showed it on there either. And like I say, it wasn't until the still images come out tonight do you think, whoa, that was pretty reckless. And the referee's in such a good position. I could understand if there was a shower of bodies in front of him and he didn't see it, you could say, well, he's got away with that one because the referee was unsighted. But the referee's got a perfect view of it. And how he didn't see it, I really don't know. And it sort of almost compounded the woes, really, when you see that. You think, well, it just wasn't going to be our day with the officials yesterday.
Sad but true. I guess we'll have to take those ones on the chin. I mean, it's difficult because, there seems to be, something every other game. I'm sure if I was a Watford fan, I'd be saying Bournemouth and their hard luck stories or something. But from our point of view, it feels a little bit like we used up all our luck last season and we're not getting much this season. And I mean, I don't want to point the finger at referees because it's just pointless doing that because it doesn't help.
It doesn't change anything.
It doesn't change the result. But I mean, I think it's always okay for fans to vent their frustration in a semi-constructive way. The second half, I think we continued to make the game pretty much, although I don't think it was as eventful as the first half. Did we? Because I noticed this against Newcastle, although we still continue to be the better team by some distance. Did we continue in the same intensity, or did we begin to fade? Because I think the way we play, the high press, the all-energy passing game, the pace, it is, I don't know if it's impossible, but it's a huge ask to keep that going for more than about 60 minutes, I think. I mean, was it as high tempo in the second half from us?
We dominated the ball still, I thought. I think the possession stats showed that. Did we actually carve out any clear-cut opportunity? I tell you what, it was like a carbon copy of the second half at Southampton, I thought. We totally dominated the game. We spent a lot of time in their half. We got into good areas. Did we actually really test their goalie? Probably not. And that could be the only negative that you could take out of yesterday's performance, that we didn't actually create any chances, real, clear-cut chances where the goalies had to make a good save, or, we dragged it wide when we should have scored, or things like that. There was a couple of half chances. Cook had a shot which flashed across the box. Cook had a header which he should have done better with, and there was a couple of sort of times where the ball bobbled around in the box and we couldn't quite get a shot away. But yeah, I would say if you had to compare that second half performance to anything we've had this season, look at what happened against Southampton in the second half, which was very good, don't get me wrong, because we totally dominated and the opposition hardly spent any time in our box. But did we actually test their goalie? No, we didn't. And was that because we ran out of steam? I don't know. Was that because King ran out? I don't know. It's difficult to say, really. And I thought they defended quite deep when we had the ball, which is natural. They're going to do that. So it was almost a case of, you try and break us down then. And we got ourselves into some good positions. Francis, like he does, worked himself into some good areas. So did the Stanislas and Daniels on the other side. Did we actually test the goalie? No, we didn't. So, yeah, I would say that perhaps... I don't know, did we run out of steam? Don't know, possibly. But it was just like the second half at Southampton, and probably just like the second half against Newcastle, really, because we should have won the game against Newcastle in the first half, but we didn't actually really create an awful lot in the second half. So, again, you could say that it was very similar to that, where we should have won the game in the first half because we scored 2 goals and we conceded 2 which were soft, and they were soft because the first one was soft on our, and then the second one should have never been a penalty. So we should have won the game in the first half. We're becoming a first half team, aren't we? Which happened last year in quite a few instances. We go into leads and we struggle to keep hold of leads when we didn't play very well. But I don't know. I think perhaps we maybe not. It depends which way you look at it. We dominated a game. We dominated the ball. So did we run out of steam? Well, you could say possibly not. Did we test the goalie? No, we didn't. So perhaps we did. I don't know. It depends whichever way you look at it. Really, you could look at it. You could look at it differently.
Yeah, Eddie didn't throw the subs. I mean, the first sub, Alan Smith came on for Matt Rich in the 80th minute. It was quite late for Eddie, and then he didn't.
But that was because Richie had already been booked. And he had committed another foul. One more foul, he would have gone. But you say about the subs, I don't think the subs would. I couldn't see how the subs could affect the game. The subs did not bring us anything different or better than what we had on the pitch. Smith came on because Richie was on a booking. McDonald come on because Arthur got a knock, and I don't know why Murray come on for King. Perhaps King did tire. I don't know. Or did we go a little bit more gung ho in the last sort of 5-10 minutes? I think perhaps King's legs just went, and that's why he was taken off. But the other 2 was because of an injury, and we didn't want Richie to get sent off. So the substitutes didn't really affect the game, or they were never going to affect the game like a substitution can at times.
I think what Eddie's trying to do, and you mentioned this already, I mean, it wouldn't have obviously been true against Southampton because we didn't improve until the second half, although he seemed to find a little bit of a solution. Hopefully it'll be an ongoing solution to our problems that we've been having in the previous run of games. He's trying to kill the games off early, and like you said about the first half, and when you go 2-0 up, you think, well, this is working. And unfortunately, as we already discussed, we lost the momentum of all that due to conceding another goal, or their first goal, very, very quickly. But, I mean, you've seen teams in the past play with that strategy. I remember Man United used to try and put the games to bed in the first 20 minutes, go 2 or 3-0 up, and they did that quite a lot. They also were able to find something, and they did yesterday as well, a little bit of luck there, but find in their sort of heyday under Ferguson, find something late in the game if they needed it. Now, I'm not expecting us to go on and win, multiple Premier Leagues or anything like that, but I think that Eddie is, at the moment, looking at that high energy game, which we've used with great success, like last season, obviously, and he's trying to get back to it and trying to kill the games early. And I suppose most games, if you went 2-0 up, you would win the games. There aren't, I don't know what the statistics are, but I bet if you looked at them, a team going 2-0 up at any point in the game will then go on to win the game, like 9 times out of 10 or whatever the actual stats would be. So hopefully that will continue to reap rewards. And that kind of takes me on to the bigger picture stuff, which, I mean, things are clearly improving in terms of performances. We were better against Southampton in the second half. It just doesn't make any sense that we didn't get anything against Newcastle. That's a bitter blow that we did get no points to their 3. And as I said in the Newcastle podcast, their fans must have been laughing their heads off all the way back up to the northeast, not laughing so much after yesterday. And then yesterday, we're certainly starting to look like a team that can make this type of football work. Of course, the big test is now coming. Everton improved. Goals are flying in. They had a good win yesterday against a poor Aston Villa team, but you win 4-0 in the Premier League. It's nothing to be sniffed at. They've got some excellent players. I mean, Lukaku, Bartley, Delafeu looks like an absolute nightmare to play against. He was brilliant when he started there. Then he got that long-term injury, and now he's obviously back. So, yeah, I mean, if we can make it work against them, obviously I'd like us to win the game, but even get a point, then things are they're just starting to look a little bit more positive, aren't they?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think things are. The only thing that's missing is the win. Everything else seems to almost be falling into place, sort of, by hook or by crook, because the players that have had to play, like we said already, aren't the players that would have been first choice in them positions if everyone had been fit. But Howe seems to have found a way that it's going to work going forward. And performance-wise, I don't think you can fault the players at all. Application, maybe, because of what we've talked about, certainly defending yesterday, maybe you could question that a little bit. But like you said as well, 9 times out of 10, you go 2-0 up, you're going to win the game. That's just an absolute giver in football but obviously certain factors contrived against us yesterday, when on another day it wouldn't. The linesman sticks his flag up and the referee doesn't give a penalty, and we win the game 2-0, and we haven't got much to talk about, but we did. Going forward, like you say, we could have almost done with an easy looking game next week. Perhaps one of the teams in the bottom 6 to 8, because what would be not good going forward is if we then got beat, say 2 or 3-0 next week by Everton, and then we're back to square one. And then look who we've got in the following 2 games: away to the champions and home to the team that are top or near the top. I think Man United top.
No, top? Leicester are top.
Leicester top. Sorry, yeah, Leicester are top, and Man United are in. They're second. So you would hate to think that all the good work and all the good that we've talked about would then be undone if it all fell apart against what are 3 of the better teams. You would think, looking at the squads on paper, that Chelsea, even though they've had a horror start, still probably finish in the top 4. It's going to be difficult for them, but you would think they're probably going to finish in the top 4. Everton would look to finish in the top 6 as well, and Man United look nailed on to finish in the top 4 as well. So that's 3. We're going to pay 3 of the top 6 teams. It's welcome to the Premier League, isn't it? No one said it was going to be easy, but it would be such a shame if all the good work that we've done in the last 3 weeks, since the second half, since the referee blew the whistle for the second half of the Southampton game. We played really well then. We did okay. It's difficult to gauge against Liverpool because it was a League Cup game. They made lots of changes. We basically had to go with what we had, and we did okay. The Newcastle game, again, 9 times out of 10, we win that, because you don't lose if you have 20 shots to the other team's 1. That just doesn't happen. And then we instead of that being perceived as a negative, which it would have been hard not to, the players trudge in after that and think, Christ, what do we have to do to win a game? And then we go yesterday and we just sort of leave off where we started against Newcastle. The next step on is going to be winning a game. It's difficult to see that in the next 3 games because of the opposition we're up against. But football's this funny old game we all go on about. We need some luck. Wouldn't it be nice if we're sat here in 3 or 4 weeks' time and we've sort of pulled ourselves up into the mid-table? I don't know if it will happen, but it would be nice. It would be nice if we could perhaps pick up. I mean, I think next week's game against Everton is going to be the one that we're going to look at as the more winnable of the 3. And it would be nice to then go into the West Brom game, which is the game before Christmas, where we think, well, we haven't been absolutely murdered by anyone. It's no Tottenham, it's no Man City. We may not have won the games, but we haven't been murdered, and we show we can compete. And let's look. Well, the run of fixtures will be a little bit easier now. And so we've still got some confidence going forward, because let's say if we suffer 3 heavy defeats, the confidence is going to be shot to bits, and we're back to square one again, really, aren't we?
I think you're right. Everton is by no stretch of the imagination easy.
No.
And if you were not a Bournemouth fan, you would put all your money on an Everton victory. But out of those 3 games, we're at home. We're coming off the back of improved form, definitely, as we've been saying, and it's potential for that game, I think. Our confidence is rising. I mean, their confidence is obviously high and they've got excellent players, so who knows? Hopefully we'll get something there. After that, if we were to win that game, then maybe we could pick up a surprise result in one of the other two games. But yeah, I think it's definitely all one game at a time cliche at the moment. Before we wind it up, Gareth, this is the first proper podcast I've done since we have had the new investors come in. Peak Six, Matt Holsizer and Jay Coppolietta have joined the board. What have you made of all that?
I don't know really. When any person invests in our football club because of what's happened, well, whether they invest, whether they join the board, whatever they do, there's always a degree of scepticism within the supporters or within the support base because of what's happened before. They will think, oh yeah, he's another Harold Walker, he's another Ken Gardner, he's another Stanley Cohen, he's another Eddie Mitchell, But the goalposts have been moved quite dramatically now. Bournemouth are playing in the richest league in the world, and so instantly the club's stock, how appealing the club would be to an investor or investors, as has happened, immediately we're a lot more appealing. Whereas when we were in League 1 or 2, or when I started watching Bournemouth, in the old 3rd or 4th division, you would immediately be sceptical about why people would get involved. You could perhaps look at this as a positive and say, well, they're becoming involved because they see us as a progressive club, one that's moving forward, stuff that's been said loads of times before, young manager, good young squad. But why wouldn't we be appealing for an investor? Instead of being sceptical and saying, well, let's look at why. Instead of thinking perhaps, are their intentions bad? Let's think, are their intentions good? And I don't know. It's what will be really. Because we've had so many clowns that have come in and tried to run our football club in the past. If it did all go belly up, you'd probably think, well, we'll just add them to the list of names that I've rattled off. But if we don't, then we could put them alongside Max Denham, can't we? It's difficult because we don't know the finer details of the deal. Has any money changed hands? You just don't know what's happened. Has Denham filled his pocket up with 25? What's a 25%? How much is a 25% share worth of our football club? No one knows that. No one knows how much our football club's worth. Yes, we have a load of money in the bank, or we will have a load of money in the bank from a TV deal, but the actual football club has very few fixed assets. So what's a football club worth? Have they got it for peanuts? If they've got it for peanuts and they're going to put a load of money in, well, that's brilliant. On the other hand, they could have got. Have they got it for peanuts and then they're just going to line their pockets? Is that what Max Denham's done? No one really seems to know. Hence why there's all this sort of cloak and dagger, shrouded in mystery. But I would be like I was when Denham. There was this kind of sceptical attitude when Denham got involved. Because, Russian businessman. Oh crikey, what's he going to be like? Look what happened up down the road at Portsmouth. They got shafted, and I think when Denham come in at the time, they were in administration again, struggling to field a team. So you immediately look at what's gone on elsewhere and you think, is it going to be like that? And as it is, you could say that Denham's been none of that. He supported the club. He obviously had a plan. We all know that he feels the plan's ahead of schedule. Was this in the plan? Was this in the pipeline all along? Sit down and talk to Trevor Watkins. He might be able to tell you the answers to that question, because he's the one that obviously brokered the deal, or says he brokered the deal between the parties. So perhaps he would, perhaps these people will come out and say, well, actually, this is what we're doing. We've come to do this because we want this club to be a Premier League club for the next 10, 20, God knows how many years. We really don't know. But because of what's gone on in the past, I think it's just whatever will be. They say enjoy the ride. Well, let's enjoy the ride. And if these guys help us going forward, then then so be it. But until we actually know what their intentions are, what they've bought, what 25... There's so many questions that are unanswered. And to be honest, we'll probably never find the answers to those questions. So we've just got to trust that it's going to be good and that it's not going to be bad, and these guys aren't just here to line their pockets and then sail off into the sunset with all the TV money. You know, they've only got 25%. It's not like they've come in and got a controlling interest. So really, if you look at it, Denham still holds all the cards, or the majority of the cards. But if these guys are worth as much as everyone says they are, and their investment is in capital and hard capital that helps us going forward, then it's got to be a good thing. But we really don't know, do we?
No, let's just hope, as you say, their intentions are honourable, and we look back in a few years, as we have now with Deming, and saying, well, this guy's definitely got the good of the club at heart, or certainly appears to have done, and hopefully these guys are going to be coming on board with that, and not people who are going to be added to that list you mentioned of clowns that we've had in the past. Anyway, Gareth, always good to hear your considered thoughts on the club, and I should also say well done on your fine endeavours in the programme this year. I know you've been doing a bit more than last year, and it's all looking good. So thanks ever so much for coming on the show, and I hope you can enjoy the rest of the season. We'll pick up that valuable win soon, and we'll speak to you soon.
Yeah, okay, thanks ever so much.
Always good to hear from Gareth. And if you haven't had the chance to check out his shirt tales and programmes from the past featured in the Matchday programme, they come highly recommended. Just before we sign off, I wanted to again point you in the direction of Cherries fan Clive Allen, who's going to be attending our next match against Everton wearing just his red Speedo swimming trunks. Clive's raising money for the Woodlands Hospice Charitable Trust and will be collecting donations in the Queen's Park pub before the match, and you can also donate through his Virgin Money page, details of which are on the All Departments website at www.alldepartments.wordpress.com. That's about all for now. Hopefully our recent improved form will lead to a sweet result against the Toffees next weekend. So up the cherries in all departments, and goodbye.
This podcast is sponsored by the White Bear Micro Pub in Southbourne-on-Sea. No loud music, no TVs, and no ringtones. Just good ale, good conversation, and good times. Just like a pub used to be. Check out www.thewhitebear.co.uk.